Aaron, can the defense stay afloat without their best player?
Man, you're asking the $10 billion question there. Everybody in Green Bay is wondering, right? I think they can, mostly due to their offense. It's kind of funny. You don't think first on the offensive side of the ball when you're talking defense, but in Green Bay, I think that's going to have to be the case. You know, they've got a ton of continuity there. A quarterback entering his prime, essentially, as a starter there for the Packers. Matt LaFleur, there's a lot of familiarity with the pieces, all the position players, etc. I mean, I don't want to say it's as easy as they just got to score 30 a week, but that has to be the game plan, you would think, as far as keeping that defense, A, fresh, B, off the field as much as possible. And then when they do have to get on the grass and take on these offenses, the big question is where's the pass rush going to come from, you know? You got former first-rounder Lucas Van Ness. There's a lot riding on his plate. They've got a bevy of young guys that they've invested in over the years that are going to have to step up, but it's all projection, some might call it hope, and I think a big component, again, is going to be about the offense controlling these football games while waiting for a defense that's going to probably have to gel. It's a new scheme, new defensive coordinator with Jonathan Gannon, while they're waiting for Micah Parsons to return.
I know that football coaches and football execs don't and can't think this way, but we can, and what we do.
Right. We're allowed.
Yeah, we're allowed to. We get a pass. Who would you say at this point right now is winning the Micah Parsons trade?
Well, I think it's a default to the Cowboys only because Micah's been off the field for a good stretch now and will be for the first part of this season, right? And when you look at what Kenny Clark can give them and the way they turned around the draft capital, will probably continue to do so next year. Sure, for the short term, if you want to say at this moment, it's easy to say the Cowboys because, again, Micah, who played phenomenal football for the Packers while he was on the field, losing his services and then going on and losing all of the games he didn't play in certainly shows the importance that the player has. But you're talking about who is winning currently the trade, I would acquiesce to the Cowboys.
Which is so interesting because you're right. It is short-term, long-term, and I think we won't know the answer for several years. We'll get an answer quickly on the change of defensive coordinator this season. Jeff Hafley regarded enough that he becomes a head coach. Jonathan Gannon comes in. Remember, he became a head coach because he was a great defensive coordinator. How big of a change will that create for this defense in your mind?
I think there's a possibility that it's an actual upgrade as far as the scheme goes, the fit with the personnel, and you know, it's weird because Hafley's first year in Green Bay as defensive coordinator in 2024, I thought he did a much better job overall. Now, you add Micah Parsons, you think, well, there's the easy button, right? But for whatever reason, it didn't really gel the way I think most people were expecting it to, especially after those first two games. I mean, they dominated Detroit, dominated Washington. You had players in the locker room talking Super Bowl, going undefeated. And then they lay a complete egg against the Cleveland Browns, and then the rest of the season, it was very uneven. And that's not all on Hafley and the defense, but he did much better work in 2024 with lesser personnel. I think if you add Gannon and his scheme, and one of the reasons I would suspect LaFleur really kind of gravitated to Gannon is he's had issues both times he's gone up against Gannon as a play caller. He knows some of the kind of problems and the uniqueness of his scheme that will give offensive coordinators problems. Again, I think it's going to take some time to gel, but I do suspect there's a decent chance that it's an upgrade overall just because, you know, Gannon's track record is pretty damn good in the NFL. I mean, we know Hafley was coming from college, certainly did a good job, but I think Gannon's got more pelts on the wall and has the opportunity, again, to be a bit of an upgrade.
One of our colleagues here at Yahoo Sports and the host of Football 301, Nate Tice, consistently ranks Jordan Love as a top 5, top 10 quarterback in the league. He loves Jordan Love.
It's because Nate's a smart guy. That's why.
Okay, well then how do Packers fans feel about Jordan Love?
I think most Packers fans do recognize how good he is. I think there's always going to be a section of the fan base that until there's a ring on his finger and a new trophy in the case there at Titletown, will always be viewing him through a certain prism, i.e. he's not Aaron Rodgers, which of course he can't be, and he doesn't need to be. What's fascinating is I do think last year really brought a lot of people around. We've seen glimpses, we've seen stretches, right? Particularly that first year as a starter, the tail end of that year, 2023, really went on a monster tear. I think getting hurt week 1 in 2024 certainly shadowed everything that season. But last year, he was incredibly efficient. One of the least turnover-prone quarterbacks in the league, though it's wild how the conversation around him rarely kind of acknowledges that reality. But yeah, as I said before, I think he's, heading into year 4 as a starter, he's going to be reaching the height of his powers, and that's what's scary for oppositions. They haven't seen his best yet. He's still continuing to get better. But I think most Packers fans really appreciate Jordan's approach, how he is as a player, and still a lot of upside there, a lot of growth still to be seen from number 10 for the green and gold.
I mean, I'll be the first to admit I'm conservative with quarterbacks. I like to get 3 years, and I know that's people in hell want ice water. I like 3 years. So I think last year was an important year because he did show efficiency. As we go into this season, knowing how clean he played and how well he played at times and how much LaFleur has done with this offense, are they getting the respect they deserve as a tandem head coach and quarterback compared to some of the other head coach quarterback tandems that we have in the NFL?
I don't think so, but I understand it because they've bowed out early the last couple of years in the playoffs, and that's what colors people's perceptions throughout an offseason. I think, and I've said this repeatedly at Cheesehead TV, once they find more team accomplishment, i.e. win the division, win a couple playoff games, they'll start to get the respect and the accolades and put on these top 10 lists, etc. But until that happens, I think people are always going to be looking at the flaws, looking at the problems and things like that. But, man, you can't deny the work that both Jordan and Matt have done as far as being a duo that has grown together. And to your point, so efficient last year. And that's with a porous offensive line. I mean, last year was some of the worst offensive line play we've seen from the Green Bay Packers in, I would say, over a decade, right? So such a big component is if you keep Jordan Love clean, and the metrics bear this out, if he's in a clean pocket, he is going to tear you apart. Your defense does not stand much of a chance. So that is, in Green Bay, the number one kind of conversation point, I would say, around the team is if the offensive line can be better, they can cook. Jordan Love can put up some serious numbers, but it does start up front, and it is a big question in 2026.
I'm so happy we have you on the show, Aaron, for so many reasons, but one of them being to get a good pulse on the fan base. We might feel one way and the fans might feel a totally different way, just being so much closer to it. And I do feel like sometimes things just run its course. Sometimes time is the thing that breeds resentment between a fan base and a respective player.
Sure.
In this case, a coach. Matt LaFleur now going into year 7, year 8 as the head coach as the Green Bay Packers. Crazy. Time flies. What is the temperature of the fan base on Matt LaFleur?
Well, that playoff exit in Chicago certainly did not help. Let's put it that way. There's little doubt that there is a very, and I mean extremely vocal part of the fan base that seems to be growing a little bit when it comes to being frustrated with Matt LaFleur. With that said, I do think most Packers fans appreciate what he's done so far in his tenure. It is odd to think how long he's been in town without a title, and now he's gotten a contract extension. I mean, we're bucking against history here. John Madden being the only coach who won a title after being in a town this long without one. That's, in all the history of the league, that's the only time it's happened. So that's what Matt LaFleur is trying to gun for, right? And I think Packers fans, again, recognize he is a good coach. But the continuous stubbing of the toe in the playoffs, coming up short, some of the maddening, frustrating decisions in game management and things like that, I understand that it's maybe, again, swelled the ranks, so to speak, of the disgruntled. And you know how it is online. The disgruntled are the ones who get all the attention, right? They take up all the oxygen. I do think there are plenty of Packers fans who very much appreciate LaFleur, understand why he was retained. But like I said, the malcontents are certainly getting louder.
You're 1,000% right. The loudest oftentimes wins. You've got a running back that's a superstar that's not a loud person in any way in Josh Jacobs. Josh obviously has meant so much to this franchise, but did battle through some injuries. He's 28. I'm not going to say he's old. I think he's just hitting some peak time here. What are your expectations for Josh in this offense?
Well, we've certainly got to hold our breath a little bit on the off-field stuff. He's still kind of hanging out there as far as what the DA in Brown County might do. But given the fact that we haven't heard anything yet, we got to suspect, he's going to be there in a couple weeks when vets report and hit the ground running in training camp. I would say you look at his history, throughout his entire career, going back to his time with the Raiders, he does seem to have this on-again, off-again kind of annual turn when it comes to his output. Last year being the downward spiral part of it, and now you would suspect he's going to bounce back. He is getting older. He does have a lot of, wear on the tires, so to speak. But I will say, I think a big part of his downward output last year is due strictly to injuries and fighting through injuries, which is what you want a player to do. We hear this all the time, like, oh, it's just this or it's just that. He could play if he wanted to, and then guys don't. They sit and fans grumble about it. Well, Josh fought like hell through a lot of different injuries last year to get on the field and was still somewhat productive, but certainly not the dynamic presence he was his first year in Green Bay. I think as long as Matt LaFleur is the play caller, he's going to get opportunities. Matt loves to run the ball. He loves to run Josh between the tackles, and I think we're going to continue to see that. Again, a big component of this is, can the offensive line be a little bit better? It's tough enough making yardage in the NFL, yards after contact, when you've got a head of steam and you're across the line of scrimmage. Josh had to do a ton of work last year at or behind the line of scrimmage just to make a positive gain out of what was going to be a negative. I think there's little doubt that he's still going to be a focal point of the offense. It is going to be interesting to see if they lean on Jordan Love a little bit more this year rather than, pounding their head against a wall for, a couple downs before they let Jordan Love throw it.
I expect the NFC North to be an absolute rock fight this season. Which one of Green Bay's rivals scares you the most in the division?
Nothing scares me except maybe my children, but I think when you look at the teams and the way they kind of match up, I don't doubt for a moment that Detroit's going to be tough, right? There's zero doubt about it. Dan Campbell is a hell of a coach, and they've got the personnel to win a lot of games, and they're going to be a tough out each and every week. But I got to say, with the Bears and Ben Johnson coming on board and Caleb really finding his game last year, there's little doubt that I think those are the two matchups that the Packers will have circled. While they're not going to make too much of it and talk about it publicly, the way things went down last year, they're going to want to get theirs back, so to speak. But you look at it, I think each one of these games is going to be tough, right? It's, like you said, definitely a rock fight and definitely good matchups. I don't think there's any two teams that you look at and say, well, this one's completely going to run over the other one. I think they're all going to be tough games, and I think they're all going to be well-fought, close football contests. But, yeah, if there's the one that you think, okay, they showed that they know how to beat the Packers and come back on the Packers and maybe exploit some of their tendencies and things of that nature, yeah, you got to look at the Bears, number one.